Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the mental health and personality factors that may be at work in the Michael Dunn case. Michael Dunn was convicted of murdering Jordan Davis and convicted of attempted murder of 3 of Jordan's friends. There was a documentary made about this crime named 3.5 Minutes, 10 Bullets. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. I'm going to combine the background and the timeline because we don't really have much of a background on Michael Dunn. Then I'll move to the trial. Then I'll talk about the mental health and personality factors. So Michael Dunn was 45 years old at the time of the shooting. He was 6'4" and 280 pounds. He had been divorced twice. He had 1 DUI arrest, and he had 1 arrest for flying into restricted airspace at the Kennedy Space Center, so fairly unusual arrest. Not really an extensive criminal history. He was a software engineer. He worked for his parents in a strip mall in Vero Beach, Florida. Just 3 weeks before the shooting, he sold his plane. His parents would pay for his legal fees. Now we move to November 23, 2012, the day after Thanksgiving, also referred to as Black Friday. We are in Jacksonville, Florida. 4 black teenage boys pulled into a Gate Petroleum gas station around 7:30 p.m. One of them was a 17-year-old by the name of Jordan Davis. One of the teenagers went into the gas station to buy cigarettes, while the other stayed in the vehicle. It was a red Dodge Durango. The music was playing in an extremely high volume. Jordan Davis was sitting in the rear passenger side seat. Michael Dunn was driving his black Volkswagen Jetta with his fiancée Rhonda Rauer in the passenger seat. They had just come from a son's wedding where they had both consumed alcohol. Michael had 3 or 4 moderately sized rum and cokes. They left early to get back to their hotel because they had a new puppy there and they didn't want the puppy to be alone that long. Michael pulled into the parking space on the passenger side of the Dodge Durango. As he was pulling into the spot, he made a pejorative comment about the loud music. Rhonda testified that he said, "I hate that thug music." During the trial, he said he used another pejorative term, but either way, he made some type of statement about the music. As Rhonda went into the gas station to buy alcohol, Michael rolled down the window and asked the teenager in the passenger seat, named Thompson, to turn the music down, which Thompson did. He actually turned it off altogether. But then Jordan Davis took his seatbelt off and reached into the front of the vehicle where the radio was and turned the volume back up. Later we see testimony suggesting that Thompson actually turned the music back up at Jordan's request. So there are different stories there, but either way, the music volume was once again at a high level. Some type of verbal argument ensued between Jordan Davis and Michael Dunn that may have involved a substantial quantity of expletives. Michael Dunn claimed that Jordan said several threatening statements that increased in severity as Jordan attempted to open the rear passenger door of the Dodge Durango. At some point, Michael said, "You aren't going to talk to me like that." This was heard by another man at the gas station. Now, Michael framed this a little differently. He claimed that he said, "Are you talking about me?" When he heard threatening language, he said he was trying to confirm that he was the target of the threats. Apparently, Michael had just finished reading a book titled Travis Bickle-Inspired De-Escalation Strategies, where he learned a number of other ill-advised statements to make in pressure situations like, "I got some bad ideas in my head," and "Hey, I'm not square, you're the one that's square." Michael would later claim that Jordan was in the possession of what appeared to be a shotgun or some type of item that looked like the barrel of a gun or maybe like a stick. So he had a lot of difficulty recognizing what he allegedly saw. Michael was in the possession of a Taurus PT-99AF 9mm semi-automatic pistol. It's almost identical to the Beretta 92, which Taurus was allowed to do because the patent had expired on that Beretta model. The Beretta 92 is the pistol that Bruce Willis used in the movie Die Hard. Both pistols, the Beretta and the Taurus, have appeared in many different movies. A common magazine size for this Taurus is 15 rounds. It appears as though Michael had 2 15-round magazines for that weapon. One was in the weapon and another was in the glove box. The weapon was in a holster in the glove compartment. Michael removed the weapon from the holster and racked the slide, which means that he did not have a round in the chamber. So he had to pull the slide back, then release it to strip off a round from the magazine and chamber it. The reason I think this is important is because it's one more thing that he had to do in order to fire the weapon, one more opportunity to contemplate his actions. Also, this demonstrates a lack of comfort with that particular weapon. The Taurus PT-99 can be easily stored safely with the safety on and the hammer down, even with the round in the chamber. So it appears as though Michael really didn't understand weapons very well. Another important characteristic of this Taurus model is it can fire both double action and single action. But unless Michael had the decocking safety on when he operated the action, the hammer would have been back after racking the slide, which means that the trigger pull would be consistent for every shot. All of them would be single action. So back to the narrative. At this point, Michael fires the weapon at the vehicle, striking Jordan several times. The driver of the Durango put it in reverse, backed out of the space as Michael continued to fire. Michael partially stepped out of his vehicle and continued firing at the Durango as it drove away. He fired 10 rounds altogether. The Durango was driven to another area in that same plaza, and then they drove back to the gas station. Jordan Davis died as a result of being shot by Michael Dunn. As the Durango was speeding away, Rhonda came back out and kind of hesitated. Michael urged her to get in the vehicle, which she did. He drove away from the scene and back to his hotel. Later, he would claim that he was worried about another car that would come up and people would get out and start threatening him or shooting at him. So apparently he thought this was a really dangerous gas station. Under that extreme threat, he didn't call the police. He drove back to his hotel, which seems like an unusual move to make if you're really feeling that people are going to come out of nowhere and start threatening you. Not long after this, they ordered pizza. According to Rhonda's testimony that we hear later on, Michael never mentioned anything about Jordan Davis having a weapon or anything like a weapon. Not on the way to the hotel, not in the hotel, and not on the trip back to where they lived. Michael was arrested in Satellite Beach, Florida at 10:30 a.m. the next day after somebody identified his vehicle from his license plate. Michael was charged with first-degree murder, 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder, and firing into a vehicle. Now moving to the trial. At Michael's first trial, we learned that there was no video of the shooting, kind of surprising considering it was a gas station. They usually have cameras in many places. Certain facts were not in dispute at the trial. Michael killed Jordan Davis. He fired at the Durango as it was being driven away. He left the scene. He never called the police. No weapon was found in the Dodge Durango or anywhere the vehicle was driven to after the shooting. There was no dispute that there was loud music coming from the Dodge Durango. Michael asked them to turn the volume down, and some type of argument took place between Jordan Davis and Michael Dunn. The argument for the prosecution was straightforward. Michael became angry at that argument, drew his weapon, and fired 10 shots, killing Jordan Davis. The teenagers did not have a weapon. He never saw a weapon. And even though he may have been somewhat provoked by Jordan saying things to him, it did not even come close to the standard of perceiving oneself to be in imminent danger. The argument for the defense required a little bit more imagination. Jordan threatened verbally to kill Michael. Jordan threatened him physically by unlatching the door, although he really couldn't open the door too much because Michael's Volkswagen Jetta was close to the Durango. Michael believed he saw something that a reasonable person would have believed was a weapon. Michael continued to fire at the vehicle even though it was driving away because he thought he could be receiving blind fire from the vehicle, meaning one or more of the occupants would simply point weapons without looking, and they would fire. When the first trial was over, Michael was convicted of 3 counts of attempted second-degree murder and of firing into a vehicle. A mistrial was declared on the most serious charge, murder in the first degree. Michael was later retried for that murder charge and convicted. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the first-degree murder and 90 years for the other 4 felonies. Now moving to the mental health and personality factors. As far as I know, there has been no information released regarding mental health factors in this case. It wasn't brought up at the trial. The defense wasn't based on anything to do with mental health. Some people have mentioned the idea of alcohol use, like perhaps that was a problem. Drinking at a wedding really isn't that unusual. I think a more significant indicator would be that prior arrest for DUI, but that could have been an isolated incident. As far as the victims, I'm not aware of any mental health issues there either. Now, looking at personality, let's take a look at the potential personality profile for Michael Dunn. I like to conceptualize personality using the 5-factor model. I remember the big 5 traits through the acronym OCEAN: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So with openness to experience, his level seems low. he appears to have fairly inflexible thinking. As far as conscientiousness, he might be in the mid-range. There's not a lot of information about this. He did have a couple of arrests prior to the murder. That may indicate that the conscientiousness is a bit lower, but that's not a lot to go on. Extroversion could be at mid-range. We do see some sensation-seeking and assertiveness, which could point to a higher level. Agreeableness, I think, would be on the lower side. He did confront teenagers, and he did shoot Jordan Davis. With neuroticism, again, there's not a lot of information. It may be mid-range. We see some emotional reactivity, but at the same time, we see someone who is able to commit murder and then go to a hotel and order pizza like nothing happened. So he was extremely calm given the circumstances, especially given the claim that he was frightened for his life. The construct of narcissism has been brought up as well. His behavior could align with a sense of entitlement, like he believed he had the right to kill Jordan. Michael tried to act like he was the victim in that incident. Arrogance is a possibility as well, based on the fact that he left the scene of the crime. With the police interrogation, we see that he ignored the Miranda warning and talked to the police, a catastrophic mistake for his defense. It's like he thought he understood the law, but he did not. The police also missed an opportunity during the interrogation. They should have taken advantage of his tendency to self-incriminate. Instead, they talked too much as well, right? So they played it kind of aggressively, and there was no need to in that situation. They could have got a lot more information by appearing to sympathize with him even more and staying with that for a longer period of time. He would have become more comfortable through the course of the interrogation and started to reveal more information. So both sides actually made a mistake there. Another possible indicator of arrogance would be the content of some of his letters he wrote when he was incarcerated. In those, he indicated how he believed people like the judge and others were foolish, and he knew everything. Something else that stands out with Michael is his unrealistic level of optimism, which could also be referred to as denial. In those letters he wrote when he was incarcerated, we see him exhibiting an incredible level of confidence about prevailing in his case, even though there was really no reason to be confident based on the evidence. So what really happened in this case? Was this actually murder? There was certainly an argument between Jordan Davis and Michael Dunn, the kind of argument that occurs on a regular basis for many people, not one that necessitated the use of deadly force. Jordan did not have a weapon, and Michael did, which, as far as I'm concerned, means that Michael had a responsibility to de-escalate or retreat from a heated or hostile situation, even if that was not required by law. So, not required by law, but required by common sense. We also know that Michael killed Jordan and endangered the other occupants in the vehicle and really everybody in that area. That was reckless to fire 10 rounds, even if he believed Jordan was some type of threat. He left the scene when he knew he should not have. That doesn't look good. And he made no mention of seeing a gun to his fiancée, but he did mention it to the police during the interrogation. Now, at the trial, there was this argument that the 3 teenagers that survived colluded after the incident. We see testimony where one of them said they did get together a few days after the shooting, but they did not talk about the shooting, which really doesn't seem believable. It seems highly likely they would have discussed the shooting, and it would make sense that they would have worked out their stories, even though, of course, that would have been a conspiracy. Even if the testimony of the 3 teenage victims was to be discarded, because they may have colluded, the evidence still points to Michael Dunn being guilty. I think Michael Dunn's best hope for beating the charges was the story about the firearm, because the teenagers did leave the scene. Now, because they were being shot at, leaving the scene was reasonable, but it still muddies the waters as far as what items were in the vehicle at the time of the shooting. One of them could have easily taken the weapon or anything else from the vehicle and thrown it in the trash. The trash could have been picked up before the police searched the area, or somebody else could have simply picked up an item and walked away. The problem for Michael is he didn't introduce that story immediately. He didn't tell his fiancée, although, of course, he claimed he did mention it to her when they were driving to the hotel. Another problem here for Michael is he kept going back to this idea that the shotgun could have actually been a stick, as if a shotgun and a stick are comparable weapons. Like if he was ready to go hunting, it would not matter to him if he took a shotgun or if he took a stick. They do the same thing, right? That was his opinion. If he was going to lie anyway, it would have made sense to stay with the lie that would have helped him. Also, if his knowledge of firearms was so poor that he could not tell the difference between a shotgun and a stick, he should not have been carrying a gun in the first place. I think the most likely explanation for what happened in this case is that Michael Dunn became angry with Jordan and decided to shoot him. He didn't think it through, and he didn't plan out his story. He wasn't planning to shoot Jordan when he went to that gas station, so he had not thought of ways to make his defense after he was arrested. Michael felt as though Jordan was being disrespectful to him, and as far as Michael was concerned, that was justification enough for homicide. Given the circumstances, I think he was guilty of second-degree murder. Premeditation can be established in a short period of time, so I can see the argument for first-degree murder, but I view this more as an angry reaction in the moment and not something that would rise to the level of premeditated. Either way, considering his age, he was going to prison for the rest of his life, right? He had a lot of felonies there. This is such an unusual case, somebody with no substantial criminal history who simply decides to shoot somebody at a gas station. This was a tragedy for everyone involved. So those are my thoughts on the Michael Dunn case. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.